All right. And yeah, speaking of starting pitchers, we have our ninth top 10 list. First time highlighting pitchers as we've done all of the position players so far. That was not intentional. That was just how the randomizer list, I think listrandomizer.com if they need if they need the promo, that's what they gave to us. But yeah, we are ranking the top 10 starting pitchers this week, which is very, very hard because there's so many of them and there's so many good ones.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, if for context, um, this is based on what we think they will do for 2025. So we're kind of ranking based, you know, along with past performance, we're just kind of going based off potential and maybe we how we think they're going to trend based on how young or old they are, or certain underlying trends that we saw like ground ball rate, strikeout rate, uh, walk rate, average exit velocity against things like that. Because yeah, it's obviously not all about just the innings and the ERA and whatnot. Especially when talking about someone for the future. That's why those underlying numbers exist. Yeah, FIP and expected ERA are probably gonna be brought up in this segment. But yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping I have. Yeah, do you want to reveal your number 10 starting pitcher in Major League Baseball?
I would love to. And for number 10, I'm actually sticking with the Padres, mentioning a guy that I was just talking about. I'm talking about Michael King, who is my number 10 starter, cracking my top 10 this year. By the way, because this list is so hard, I actually went ahead and made a top 20,
Hmm.
just so I made sure I was considering everyone that I really believed was worthy of being on this list. Um, Michael King did make the cut for me, though. The reason why, it may be a surprising pick, but he has been a top 10 starting pitcher the entire time that he's been in the role. He made his first start of kind of the transition into being a starter last year on August 24th of 2023. He started, I believe, 8 games for the Yankees at the end of the season. And since then, he ranks tied for eighth in starting pitcher FWAR with 5.3. So kind of justifying my pick there. I mean, the entire time that he's been a starting pitcher by FWAR, he's been a top 10 starting pitcher. So he is, like I said, cracking the list for me. And what I love most about him, and it shows very clearly when you look at his baseball savant page, is the contact that he gets against him. Very weak contact, an average exit velocity of 85.7 miles per hour, a hard hit rate of 30.3%. I love any starting pitcher that gets consistent weak contact because at that point, as long as you're not giving up too many line drives, the batted balls don't really matter. I talk about fly balls a lot. I talk about pulled fly balls a lot. If you're giving up fly balls that are hit 89 miles an hour, it doesn't matter where you're hitting the ball unless it's like, the pesky pull corner at Fenway or the short porch at Yankee Stadium, maybe the Crawford boxes in Houston. For the most part, it's going to stay in the yard, and that's kind of what's happened with Michael King. Opponents, like I mentioned, had an 89.4 mile per hour average exit velocity on line drives and fly balls last year against Michael King, the lowest among the 199 pitchers with at least 100 line drives and fly balls allowed last year. And it was also the second lowest average exit velocity against on the 745 seasons since 2015 with at least 200 line drives and fly balls allowed. The only other season to produce a lower average exit velocity on fly balls and line drives, minimum 200 of them, was 2015 Jake Arrieta. And if you remember correctly, he was pretty good. He won the Cy Young Award and have had an ERA below 2, which was pretty awesome. And on top of that, the strikeout numbers are still there, 27% last year, a whiff rate near 30, a chase rate above 30. There's really nothing that he doesn't do very well, which is just really cool to see him break out into such an effective starter immediately. Even doing it as a sinker baller, that's pretty impressive as well. All of the secondaries work very well for him. His changeup has a 36% whiff rate, or he had a 36% whiff rate last year, and an average exit velocity of 81.5 miles per hour as well. So with that being said, Michael King is debuting this list for me. He is making the number 10 spot.
So yeah, my number 10, uh, I think, you know, people might overlook this guy a little bit because, he wasn't on the mound as much as kind of we desired last year. But I'm kind of sticking with my guns on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He was my number 8 starting pitcher heading into 2024. And yeah, he's heading into his age 26 season. And yeah, he really didn't do anything for me to demote his case last year, um, other than other than get injured. And granted, it was an arm injury, but I think it was, it was surgically repaired, and I don't foresee it being an issue. And obviously, I'm not a sports doctor, so I can only know so much. Um, but he threw 90 innings last year, and he put up a flat 3 ERA and a 2.61 FIP. Among 140 pitchers with 90 plus innings last year, Yamamoto ranked 5th in FIP, 12th in strikeout rate, and 12th in strikeout minus walk rate. And although he missed time with an injury last year, he threw 170 plus innings each of the previous 3 years in Japan, which is why I'm not really as concerned about the health. Just, it would be easy to be concerned about it considering his only year in MLB, he had an issue, but he threw 170 plus innings each of the previous 3 years in professional baseball. And yeah, I'm definitely leaving some guys off the list who have a much more proven track record. There's definitely some guys who have thrown a lot more innings and had a lot more pedigree over the last few years. But I do have a lot of faith in what Yamamoto did in that small sample size in those 90 innings. And I see potential for him to, keep that going and maybe even get even better. Because yeah, there's a reason why, the Dodgers gave $325 million to this guy. He does show a lot of potential and a lot of talent. And we saw glimpses of that last year. So yeah, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's my number 10. Who is your number 9?
Yeah, number 9, I'm going with one of two returners that I have from my starting pitcher list last year. That's probably not a good thing for my list from last year, but I'm actually going with the same guy that I put at number 9 last year. My opinions of him have not changed. Talking about Tyler Glasnow from the Los Angeles Dodgers, who, you know, pitched a career high, I believe, in innings pitched last year with 134. Something that we talked a lot about was, maybe that now that he's off the Rays, we can see him get a little more time on the mound. We did last year, although that doesn't mean he didn't, miss some time. He only made 22 starts last year, but in those 22 starts, he had a 3.49 ERA and a 2.90 FIP, which is just about identical to the FIP that he had in 2023, the year in which I picked him as the year that he was coming off of when I picked him as my Cy Young Award winner last year. And just about everything that's under the hood that you can like about Glasnow, it's there. Not only does he strike out a lot of batters, not only does he keep few guys off of the bases because of walks, but he also has a lot of ground balls, and you don't see that from a lot of pitchers these days. A 48.3% ground ball rate. The average for the league is around 44%, and that 4% does matter between him and the average, especially given the fact that his four-seam fastball actually gives him a pretty relatively good ground ball rate. It only had a 15-degree launch angle last year, which is low by pitch standards. And on top of that, the secondaries are just unreal. His slider had a opponent's batting average of 200 and an opponent's slugging of 333 last year, an average exit velocity of 87.3% and a 40% whiff rate. And the curveball was even more special. An 0.98 opponent's batting average with a 115 expected batting average, a 174 slugging with a 170 expected slugging, a 0-degree average launch angle, and a 47.5% whiff rate. Again, Glasnow had a 43% whiff rate and 52% ground ball rate on breaking balls in 2024. That's me talking again about that slider and that curveball. And that whiff rate, the 43%, ranked first among the 53 pitchers with at least 750 breaking balls thrown. And the ground ball rate was 7th among the 80 pitchers with at least 100 batted balls on breaking balls. So, he has some really special talents, among the best in the league in terms of breaking balls. The fastball is also very good. I mean, a 21% whiff rate. Along with that, he gets good extension on his pitches that gives him perceived velocity on top of the good velocity that he already has. Just about everything in his arsenal is pretty lethal. And, when he's on the mound, he is one of the best. So Tyler Glasnow is staying on this list for me. He is in my number 9 spot, same place that I had him last year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Certainly, interested in what he can do if he does accomplish that full season. Um, my number nine is a uh, someone who was not on my list last year. It is Corbin Burns. He is heading into his age 30 season, and I left him off the list last year, which was kind of against the grain. I think most people who put out a top 10 starting pitcher list had Corbin Burns in their top 10. I know MLB Network did, and you did, and Foolish Bailey had him, I think, top 20 for players overall. But I did not have him on the list, and I was concerned about uh, you know really steep declines in strikeout and whiff rate. However, the strikeout rate did keep declining last year, but he is showing that he can perform well without elite strikeout numbers. And part of why a lot of why I have him on the list is also just because of his general workload. He ranks third in innings over the last 3 years, and also among the 21 pitchers who have thrown 350 plus innings over the last 2 years, he ranks second in ERA. And among the 40 pitchers with 5,000 plus pitches thrown, his expected WOBA against ranks third, average exit velocity against ranks second, and barrel rate against ranks first. The average exit velocity and barrel rate specifically really stand out to me because, if you're not going to have an elite strikeout rate, you got to make sure that your contact against you is very low, the quality of contact against you is very poor, and that's exactly what Corbin Burns has. Their hitters are not able to hit the ball very hard off of him, nor are they able to hit very many hard fly balls off of him, and that's just a great quality that he's shown over a large workload. And also, out of the 70 pitchers with 750 plus batted balls against over the last 2 years, Corbin Burns has the second lowest sweet spot rate against. He does tend to get more ground balls, more pop ups than average, and is able to keep hitters from getting those optimal launch angles that get the hits. So yeah, Corbin Burns, I'm sure that I don't know if he'll rank like top 10 in ERA, top 10 in FIP this upcoming year, but I do think just his overall workload will be in the top 10. Or overall production will be in the top 10 because he's consistently thrown. I think he's thrown 190 innings each of the last 3 years. And has maintained some very quality performance as well. So yeah, I have him in just because of his general production and consistency over the last 3 years, at least in terms of ERA. Um, who do you have at number eight?
Yeah, number eight, I'm talking about a guy that uh, had some success in 2023 and a little bit of a shorter sample size, but really backed it up with another great season last year and a full season's worth of work. Talking about Cole Reagans from the Kansas City Royals, a new recipient of a $13 million extension covering some pre-arb and arb years. So he's been in the news lately, and he is staying in the news, making the number 8 spot on my top 10 list. Cole Reagans has really become the ace that people were hoping to see him become, when he had some success in 2023. He backed it up with, just like I said, another phenomenal season in 2024. He had a 3.14 ERA, a 3.31 expected ERA, very good strikeout numbers, very good contact against as well. An average exit velocity of 88 miles per hour, which is right in line with league average, a little bit better than that. Additionally, for a guy that throws a lot of four seamers, 41% to be exact, a 41% ground ball rate, although below league average, is still pretty good. Additionally, he had a 23% whiff rate on that four seamer, which is solid. Some of the secondaries also complemented very nicely, specifically his changeup. His changeup was the second most thrown pitch in his arsenal last year. It had a 47.8% whiff rate and an 81 mile per hour average exit velocity. That whiff rate was the highest among the 360 pitches that were thrown at least 500 times last year, and the average exit velocity was the second lowest. So the changeup in two different aspects was one of the best of any pitch thrown in 2024. Additionally, since he made his Royals debut in July of 2023, Cole Reagans ranks third among all starting pitchers with 7.3 Fangraphs wins above replacement. So in terms of that, he's been one of the best. He's also been great with availability, like the rest of his team. 186 innings pitched last year, coming from a guy that had never pitched a full season before that. I think that's a pretty incredible workload for a guy with, just getting into that kind of rhythm. Like I said, and while doing so, maintaining a near 30% strikeout rate and above 30% whiff rate, a near 30% chase rate, not giving up hard contact. There's a lot of excellent things that he did in such a huge sample size last year. And I think the 186 innings is a lot of the reason why I have him on my team. He's a guy that went out there and made 33 starts last year, 32 starts last year, and prove that he really is the guy that we saw him as in those flashes in 2023. So he's making the cut for me this year. Cole Reagans ranks at number 8 for me.
Yeah. He's certainly impressed uh, this past year and kind of solidified his status. My number 8 is my number 5 from last year. It is Logan Webb. He is heading into his age 28 season, and I think it's appropriate that him and Burns are back to back because I kind of have similar expectations for them, and I'm putting them on the list for very similar reasons. And with Logan Webb, I do think of this 10 that I'm talking about, of these 10 pitchers, I think he will have the worst rate statistics, but I think he gets on this list due to his workload coupled with very quality performance. He leads all pitchers in innings over the last 2 years and the last 3 years. And among qualified pitchers over the last 2 years, he ranks eighth in ERA, second in FIP, and second in FWAR and BWAR overall. No matter innings minimums and whatnot. I guess a concern from this past year would be his expected ERA was in the 34th percentile last year. But similar to hitters, got to look at the pulled fly ball rate, and he had a 17% rate of fly balls being pulled against him, which is the lowest rate of among the 91 pitchers with 100 plus fly balls against them last year. And among 120 pitchers with 150 plus fly balls against them over the last 2 years, Webb has the fourth lowest rate. And especially at Oracle Park, if you're hitting it to those deep gaps, you're going to have a tough time hitting home runs. And that's where Logan Webb has been having his hitters hit those fly balls at a pretty disproportionate rate, which is why, maybe he's outperforming his expected metrics by a little bit. However, yeah, he moves down this list a little bit. I mentioned he was my number 5 last year because his ground ball rate and strikeout rate went down, and his walk rate also went up. However, those numbers were kind of around that level in 2022. And in that year, he put up a 2.90 ERA and 3.03 FIP that year. So even with those underlying numbers, he's been able to have really good success with that, and that's just with those numbers. That's banking on them not improving. So yeah, Logan Webb, he's just he is the biggest workhorse in baseball as it stands right now, and he also does a really good job at preventing runs and putting together good underlying numbers as well. So he gets on my list at number 8. Who do you have at number 7?
At number 7, maybe I'm being a little bit ambitious with this pick. He's only coming off of his first season as a starter, but I mean, it's too good to ignore what we saw out of Garrett Crochet last year. He's making this list at my number 7 spot, switching his socks from white to red this year, getting traded to Boston for quite a hefty haul, and there's a good reason for it. I mean, 146 innings and 209 strikeouts last year, strikeout rate above 35%, additionally a chase rate and a whiff rate both above 30%. He joined Chris Sale and Tarek Skubal last year as the only pitchers, qualified pitchers, to have a chase rate, whiff rate, and strikeout rate above 30%. All of them were above 33% for him. He's kind of he's almost like Chris Sale too, not just in the arc of getting traded from the Red Sox, from the White Sox to the Red Sox, but a lefty pitcher with big strikeout numbers, kind of following that arc. And just to give you an idea of what those strikeout numbers look like, in case you aren't already aware, all 5 of the pitches he threw last year had a whiff rate above 30%. The lowest of any of them was his four-seamer at 31%. The most was his sweeper at 42%. So no matter what he was throwing at you, there was a pretty good chance you were going to swing and miss at it. On top of that, the average exit velocity was solid. It was below the major league average. He was also getting really good extension on already really good velocity. Kind of being a little more deceptive, obviously leading to those more strikeouts. 9.6% of total pitches that were thrown by Garrett Crochet in 2024 were in the strike zone and swung and missed at. That was the highest rate among the 170 pitchers with at least 1250 pitches thrown last year. It was also the highest of the 680 seasons since 2008 by a left-hander with at least 1500 pitches in a season. Yeah, the classic 1500 inning season back in the 1800s that we all know and love, where people were striking out 13 batters per nine. Yeah, it was just a ridiculous year for him. Definitely very much out of left field, but it's too good to ignore for me. Garrett Crochet is making the list for me in my number 7 spot.
Yeah, and for the first time today, we are talking about the same player in the episode, and it is Garrett Crochet is also my number 7.
Cool.
And yeah, like I kind of feel the same way about you, which is why I put him in the exact same place. Just an overview, he's heading into his age 26 season. And last year, out of 81 pitchers with 140 plus innings pitched, he ranked fourth in expected ERA, third in FIP, first in strikeout rate, first in strikeout rate, strikeout minus walk rate, xFIP, and SIERA. He was also 93rd percentile in chase rate and whiff rate. And his differences in ERA and FIP, I know, his ERA was 3.58, his FIP was 2.85. Part of that can be explained by a 3.18 BABIP against, which was the sixth highest out of 81. So, I expect his ERA to be a lot closer. I expect it to be in the twos rather than the threes this upcoming year, just based on the underlying numbers, based on what, FIP and expected ERA are telling us. And I think maybe some people might have concern about his workload. He's never really had a full season as an unlimited starter, but I'm not really too concerned about it. He threw 146 innings last year, but before the White Sox started limiting his pitch count, he threw 5.5 innings per start, and then after they started limiting him, he only threw about 3 innings per start. So if they kind of just let him go, and I'm not saying it was the wrong decision, but hypothetically, if they just let him go, he would have qualified for the ERA title and all the fun stuff there. So I'm not really concerned about the innings quite yet. And yeah, last thing I'll say, I think I look at his 2024 in a somewhat loosely similar manner as I do Tarek Skubal's 2023. If Tarek Skubal threw 80 innings that year and showed really great signs, especially under the surface. And then, he went on to win the Cy Young in 2024. I see potential for that with Garrett Crochet based on what he showed us in 146 innings last year. So yeah, I have high expectations for him. And he makes my number 7. Who do you have at number 6?
Yeah, at number 6, I'd like Cole Reagan's another guy that had success in 2023 and then doubled down on it in 2024. And because of it, got a nice payday for himself. I'm talking about my second Dodgers pitcher of the episode, talking about Blake Snell, who I am putting in my number 6 spot, coming off of signing a 5-year, $182 million contract. Yeah, he only threw 104 innings last year, but that's also pretty astonishing considering he only made 20 starts. There were 2 major criticisms of Blake Snell that people had following his Cy Young season. One of them being that he doesn't pitch deep into games. One of them being that he has a high walk rate. And while the walk rate can still be lowered quite considerably, it went down nearly 3% last year, going from 13.3% to 10.5%. On top of that, the strikeout rate increased by a relatively similar percent. It went up 3.2%. And in terms of the inning stuff, he threw a no-hitter last year, a 9-inning no-hitter. He completed 7 innings 4 times, and he completed 6 innings 10 times out of 20 starts. Half the time he pitched, he completed 6. That is uh, quite remarkable considering where he was at with this kind of discourse last year. I mean, he kind of proved everyone wrong on the things that people doubted him for, and deservingly got the contract that he had been after for a couple of years now. 257 expected ERA, a 150, 178 expected batting average against. Like I mentioned, very good strikeout numbers, a 37% whiff rate, a 28.9% hard hit rate as well. He also gave up, some of the best in terms of soft contact, like I talked about with Michael King earlier. Blake Snell is that, but with even better strikeout numbers. So there's a lot to be very happy about with what we saw out of him. Between his curveball, his changeup, and his slider, which are his three secondaries, he was the only pitcher in all of baseball to have at least three pitches that he threw at least 150 times that had a whiff rate at or above 40%, which is quite astonishing. And by the way, they weren't scraping the surface of that. His curveball that he threw 462 times had a 49.8% whiff rate. It was near 50. His changeup that he threw 311 times had a 47.6% whiff rate. And his slider, which he threw 178 times, had a 44.6% whiff rate. So it wasn't just scratching the surface of that 40%. In addition, 57.6% of plate appearances against Blake Snell last year ended with either a strikeout or a batted ball below 85 miles per hour. So almost 60% of the time you were either whiffing or you were getting a small piece of it. So I really liked what I saw out of Blake Snell last year. I was skeptical last year, like a lot of people, but he really won me over last year. And I now see him as a top six pitcher in the game.
My number six pitcher is someone who we haven't seen very much of recently. But I do have faith that if he can just stay there, stay on that rubber, he will be the sixth most productive pitcher on this list. And I'm talking about Jacob deGrom of the Texas Rangers. Jacob deGrom is heading into his age 37 season. He's coming off Tommy John surgery. He got back on the mound for 10 innings last year. And yeah, I think injuries have definitely fogged people's memories on how truly great he is. Because when he is on the mound, he is the best pitcher in the world. Yes, he hasn't pitched a full season since 2019, but among the 308 pitchers with 200 plus innings pitched since the start of 2020, he leads in strikeout minus walk rate and FIP. And by the way, that strikeout minus walk rate is 37%, and that FIP is 180. I think the average for strikeout minus walk rate is 14%. Average for FIP is, around 4. He's at 37% and 180. And he also ranks third in ERA among those 308 pitchers with 200 plus innings pitched, and first among starters with 200 plus innings pitched since the start of 2020. Concerning the injuries, his elbow issue started in 2021, which is when he stopped consistently making his starts. And that lingered until he got Tommy John surgery in 2023. It's not it hasn't been like a Mike Trout type situation where he's gotten injured in a lot of different places, and he just seems to be very injury prone right now. It was always an elbow issue with Jacob deGrom, and it didn't get the ultimate solution for it until 2023. And now that his elbow is fixed, I expect him to, get a decent workload. I expect him to throw like 100 plus innings, maybe, maybe like 150. I don't know, but I do expect him to throw a lot more innings than he has the past, 2, 3 years. And when he did return last year, I mentioned he threw 10 innings. He threw 10 and 2/3 innings pitched. He put up a 1.69 ERA, 2.32 FIP, a 30% strikeout minus walk rate, and a 97.3 mile per hour average fastball velocity. So I do believe, based off that and what we saw in the brief parts of 2023 and 2022, I do believe that when he is on the mound, he is the best pitcher in the world. It's just a matter of him getting on the mound, and I think he'll get on the mound a bit more than he has in the past. So, and just based on like it's such a huge risk to not put him on, considering, if he does throw 150 innings, he's probably going to be in Cy Young contention. So yeah, I have Jacob deGrom at number 6. Who do you have at number 5?
At number five, I have the reigning National League Cy Young Award winner from the Atlanta Braves. I'm talking about Chris Sale. We didn't just see a Chris Sale resurgence in 2024. We saw the return, the full return of peak Chris Sale, the guy that he was in his last few years with the White Sox and his first couple of years with the Red Sox. We saw that guy come back to the mound for the Atlanta Braves. The change of scenery seemed to really suit him very well. We saw the 30% strikeout rate, the low average exit velocity, everything that we've always loved about Chris Sale, we got to see in full once again in 2024. It was actually the first year in throughout his major league career. Sorry, the second year in his major league career where his slider was the most thrown pitch in his arsenal. It was at 40% last year, the highest that it's been in any year of his career. And that's obviously what he made himself famous for, was throwing that slider and having nasty movement, getting a lot of whiffs on it. And just to give you an idea of how nasty that slider still is in Chris Sale's age 35 season, uh, he threw 323 sliders last year with at least 50 inches of drop and 10 inches of glove side movement. That means horizontal and vertical movements. No one else in Major League Baseball threw more than 48 of such sliders. Chris Sale threw 323 of them. So it was just, in terms of the consistency and the movement, no one else was even in the same stratosphere as Chris Sale last year. And his secondary pitch was his four seamer, another pitch that he's used as a primary for himself in the last couple of seasons. He had a 37.5% ground ball rate on his four seamer last year, the highest that he's had in any full season. So not only is he, getting this weak contact, getting these strikeouts, but he's even getting more ground balls, a 46% ground ball rate last year, kind of in line, a little bit more in line with what he had been doing previously. So love to see that out of him, obviously. And yeah, it was very cool to see that return to the mound, kind of seeing the Chris Sale of old in everything that we had always grown to know about him. Obviously, it had been a very long road back through multiple different injuries through Tommy John. And yeah, he is officially back, and he is back into his prime. He's kind of having he kind of started a second prime last year. We'll see if it continues, but I have him as my number five starter going into next year.
At my number five, is another newcomer to my list. By the way, I forgot to mention Garrett Crochet and Jacob deGrom were both newcomers to my list, kind of, I guess, implied. I don't know if anyone had them in their lists last year, but Cole Reagans is also another newcomer, and he is my number five on this list. He is heading into his age 27 season, and since being acquired by the Royals in July of 2023, he has a flat 3 ERA and a 2.85 FIP in 258 innings pitched. And among 40 qualified starters in that span, his ERA ranks fourth, and FIP, strikeout rate, and home runs per nine all rank second. And yeah, he finished fourth in the AL Cy Young last year. I don't really have much else analysis. I think the numbers really speak for themselves. The Royals kind of were able to just redirect him and put him in the right direction, and it's made him one of the best pitchers in baseball for the last year and a half. So yeah, that's why I put him there, especially as someone on the younger side. I just kind of expect that to continue this upcoming year, and he's definitely a Cy Young candidate for 2025. So yeah, Cole Reagans is my number five. Who do you have at number four?
So for my number four starter, it's a guy that you already touched on, and I don't really have much else to add because I think there's a clear narrative with him, and you said it perfectly. I'm talking about Jacob deGrom, who, yeah, I'm still putting as a top four starter in baseball this year. Yeah, I mean, I think we all know. I think no one's really denying that Jacob deGrom has the talent to be the number four, at least best starter in baseball next year. It's really just a matter of does he stay on the field long enough to make that happen. I feel pretty optimistic about it. And I think people should be reminded that, even in the limited amount of time that we've seen Jacob deGrom over the last couple of seasons, he's been the guy that we all know. In the time that Jacob deGrom has spent with the Rangers, albeit not a lot of time, he has a 34.1% K rate minus walk rate, which ranks second highest among the 596 pitchers with at least 40 innings pitched over the last two seasons. In the brief time that we saw him last year, we saw everything that we know and love: a 31.8% strikeout rate, a 2.3% walk rate, a 2.51 expected ERA. Yeah, I'm very optimistic to see his return to the mound full time next year. I'm hoping that we can really see that full season of peak Jacob DeGrom because we really, I mean, I guess 2018, but like there's still so much of him that's even gotten better since 2018. I really just want to see what that looks like over a full season. He would probably be my number one if I really anticipated as a lock that he would be on the mound for at least enough innings to qualify. But I can't say that for certain. He is my number four though, because I still think there's a lot of excitement with him coming back on the mound.
Yeah, I think from both of us on an inning per inning basis, Jacob DeGrom is probably number one for us. It's just
Yes.
it will he get the innings? And yeah, just to go back, like that's why I have, Corbin Burns and Logan Webb on is like, yeah, sure. There's definitely some guys I left off the list that I think are going to do better on an inning per inning basis, but I'll take, Webb and Burns's production along with like the 30 plus 30 innings that I expect them to have over some of the competition
Hmm.
that I left off. Um, and yeah, I guess that goes against DeGrom as well. And speaking of that, my number four is Chris Sale, the reigning National League Cy Young winner. He was not on my list last year. He's heading into his age 36 season, and in his first time qualifying for the ERA title in 7 years, he led MLB in ERA, FIP, strikeout rate, strikeout minus walk rate, and home runs per nine. He was also 92nd percentile or higher in uh, expected ERA, average exit velocity against, chase rate, strikeout rate, and hard hit rate. And yeah, I guess part of the reason why I don't have him higher is, that was his first really good and productive year in like 6 years. It had been since 2018 since he was pitching like that, and also pitching that many innings. Uh, and also, I guess a little bit of a concern is he did get hurt at the end of the year. Not that that injury might, continue into this year. It's just he did show like there were some signs that, maybe the injury stuff isn't, something that's completely behind us. So, you don't know how many innings, you never know how many innings you're going to get with Chris Sale. But based on the fact that he led all of Major League Baseball in all the important categories last year, I do have to put him pretty high um, because yeah, I mean, there's no reason with his pitching for me to doubt him too much. So yeah, I have him at number four, and yeah, if he repeats success, even though he's on the older side, he probably moves up a little bit higher. Who do you have at number three?
At number three, I have my second and final returner to this list from my top 10 starting pitcher list from last year. This guy was actually my number one starting pitcher last year, and it's not that he had a down year. He had exactly the year I was hoping he would have. There just happens to be two more that I uh, just decided to put above him this year. I'm talking about the ever reliable Zach Wheeler, who has become a guy that we really might have to start talking about Hall of Fame with. I mean, it obviously is going to take a few more seasons. I don't think he's there right now, but he's maybe like two or three seasons of this caliber away from. We need to have this serious discussion. Has he done enough? Is this like the Adrian Beltre arc where he just has a Hall of Fame 30s? And because he has been the best pitcher in the league. Chris, you love talking about Jose Ramirez, and he's led the league in F WAR in this many years. Well, Zach Wheeler has led all pitchers in F WAR since 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, and 2018. He has been the best pitcher in the league for the last 7 seasons now, and he has not really shown many signs of stopping in the recent past. Last year, he put up a 280 expected ERA, the second best for him in any season. He's still giving up low average exit velocities. He's still striking out a lot of guys, even at age 34. I know that's not terribly old, but it feels like he's been doing it for a while now, and nothing has really changed about him. The four seam fastball is still exactly what it needs to be. He's getting a near 30% whiff rate on it, which is outstanding. On top of that, getting some high exit velocity, getting a lot of pop ups on it, which I really love to see from him. Um, Wheeler's sinker, which is his secondary, the pitch that he threw the second most. It was the only pitch in 2024 to produce an average exit velocity of 85 mile per hour or lower, and an average launch angle at 0 degrees or lower on at least 150 plate appearances. So again, getting on multiple aspects, getting some really solid results on that low contact and a low launch angle, a high ground ball rate on that. That's exactly what a sinker is supposed to do, and Zach Wheeler's doing it just about better than anyone else, which I think is a really good sign for his career longevity, right? Sinkers are not a pitch that you have to blow away from people. You don't have to get high strikeouts on it. You have to do exactly what Zach Wheeler has done with it, and the fact that he's doing it right now, I think, shows eventually he can, transition that into being the top pitch in his arsenal, and continue to succeed off it. So Zach Wheeler is my number three. I'm continuing to see just outstanding year after year from him. And yeah, he is still worthy of being a top three pitcher in the league for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I will second you on that as Zach Wheeler is my number three as well. He was my number two on last year's list. And yeah, he's heading into his age 35 season. He ranks fourth in innings over the last 2 years, so he's definitely on the workhorse side of things, and partially because of that, he's first in F4 over the last 2 years. And as you mentioned, he's first in F4 over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 years. Um, but uh, but yeah, among 21 pitchers with 350 plus innings over the last 2 years, uh, Wheeler leads in ERA and strikeout minus walk rate, and he also ranks third in FIP. And among the 40 pitchers who have thrown 5,000 plus pitches over the last 2 years, Wheeler has the lowest average exit velocity against, the lowest expected batting average, expected slugging, and expected WOBA against. And he is, based on those numbers, I think he has been just the best pitcher over the last 2 full years. 2 full years going back to, March of 2023. And I expect him to really continue success into next year. I don't really there's nothing that he showed last year to make me think that his performance will devolve in any way. So I expect him to be a top pitcher once again. Who do you have at number two?
Yeah, at number two, I have another reigning Cy Young winner, this one in the American League, coming from the Detroit Tigers. It's Tarek Skubal. Again, talking about Crochet, talking about Snell, talking about Reagan's a guy that had success in a smaller sample size. Well, I guess not in Snell's case. Success in 2023 and backed it up in 2024, this time in such a tremendous way. Everything, yeah, I think Skubal kind of performed to like the 90th percentile of what I imagined he was capable of. And it was just an outstanding season. And he was so much fun to watch on the mound, especially in those September starts when he was kind of the entire rotation and performing as good as any rotation needs to be on his own. 228 strikeouts in 192 innings, a 272 expected ERA, 30% strikeout rate, 31% whiff rate, 31% chase rate. On top of that, above league average ground ball rate, weak contact, an average exit velocity of 87.5%. There was nothing more you really could have asked out of Tarek Skubal last year, in terms of overall numbers. He was since 2023, Tarek Skubal is the only starting pitcher to post a qualifying season in the 90th percentile or higher on strikeout rate and walk rate. And he's done it in both years. It is Tarek Skubal 2, everybody else 0 in terms of being a starter, qualifying, and posting a 90th percentile strikeout rate and walk rate since 2023. It's pretty awesome. Additionally, between his four-seamer and his changeup, he became the first pitcher last year since 2022 to record a 30+% strikeout rate on 200 plus plate appearances on multiple pitches within a season. So, I mean, the top two pitches that he throws, both of them just got outstanding results. Like I mentioned, 30% whiff rate or higher. So that was very fun to watch. I enjoyed seeing that. So yeah, Tarek Skubal, he's my number two. I'm very excited to see another season of him. Would love to see the Tigers maybe extend him this year. He's already done the Tommy John. The Tigers didn't do much this offseason. I think they can kind of salvage all of it by signing Tarek Skubal to a long-term deal.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Probably becoming a fan favorite too. My number two starting pitcher for 2025 is Paul Skeens. He is heading into his age 23 season. Just won Rookie of the Year this past year and was a Cy Young finalist as well. And yeah, he debuted on May 11th last year, and from that date on, he led all qualifying MLB starters in ERA, strikeout minus walk rate, xFIP, and SIERA. And he also ranked second in FIP. And then also among 62 pitchers with 2,000 plus pitches thrown in that span, he had the lowest expected batting average, expected slugging, and expected WOBA against. So, I mean, just kind of almost undoubtedly from the time he debuted last year, he was the best pitcher in baseball. And then along with that, kind of the cherry on top, he also had a higher ground ball rate, higher pop-up rate, lower average exit velocity against, and lower expected numbers against him with runners in scoring position. So in the moments where it really, really mattered, he raised his level of pitching. And yeah, if he continues pitching like this, he will probably be number one next year for me. So yeah, Paul Skeens is my number two. Who do you have as the best starting pitcher in baseball heading into 2025?
Yeah, I went back and forth a lot on if I wanted to do this or not, and I decided for it. I'm putting Paul Skeens as my number one starter in all of Major League Baseball going into 2025. Last year, Paul Skeens made 23 starts. He pitched 133 innings, struck out 170 batters, posted a 196 ERA, started the Major League All-Star game for the National League, won Rookie of the Year, was a finalist for Cy Young, also had a 52.3% ground ball rate despite everything else. Imagine what he could do in his first full season. Imagine what he could do in his first full season. We haven't even seen it yet. There's reports on Twitter that he's working on some new pitches, a new two-seamer, a new cutter, on top of everything that he already has. He already like invented a two-seamer out of thin air last year with the Splinker, which was one of the best pitches in all of baseball. It had a 3.0 run value per 100 on 155 plate appearances, a run value of 18, and one of the best in all of baseball. As a sinker, it's listed as a sinker. It's called a splinker. It's a mix between a splitter and a sinker. It had 30.3 inches on average of vertical movement, which is exactly what you're supposed to get out of a sinker. On top of that, it also gets a lot of whiffs, 29.3%. You're not supposed to get that on a sinker, but that's of course not what Paul Skeens throws. It's very cool that it registers that way. On top of that, the four-seam fastball averaging 98.8 miles per hour, throwing 100 with ease, bringing him to a 253 expected ERA last year, a 33.1% strikeout rate, only a 6.2% walk rate. On top of that, good average exit velocity numbers, literally like not sacrificing anything for any certain skill, kind of just picking up everything on his way to, like I said, in my opinion, being the top starter. He had a 248 expected WOBA against last year, which was the lowest among the 170 pitchers with at least 1,250 total pitches thrown throughout the season. It was also the third lowest among the 202 pitchers with at least 2,000 pitches thrown in any season since 2015 at age 25 or younger. And by the way, Skeens just finished his age 22 season. According to Fangraphs, Paul Skeens is one of just two pitchers since 2002 to post a season with 130 innings pitched, a ground ball rate above 50%, and a K rate minus walk rate above 25%. The only other pitcher to do so since 2002, you might have heard of him. His name is Clayton Kershaw, and he turned out to have a pretty good career for the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is the most exciting young pitcher we've seen probably since Steven Strasburg. There is so much excitement when he is on the mound, regardless of anything else, regardless of the lineup he's facing, the team he's on. It doesn't matter. Skeens Day is must watch every single time, and he is my number one pitcher in baseball going into next year.
Yeah, he certainly has a very good case. And yeah, there's definitely a reason to put him number one. However, my number one is Tarek Skubal, who I ashamedly did not have on the list last year. And I say that because I did see the potential there, but I did not bite. But luckily, I did correctly pick him as the AL Cy Young, which is the first time I've picked a Cy Young correctly on this show. Um, but Tarek Skubal is heading into his age 28 season, and he returned from flexor tendon surgery on July 4th, 2023, and since then has put up a 2.51 ERA and 2.35 FIP in 272 and a third innings pitched. In that span, he leads all qualified starters in MLB in ERA, FIP, strikeout minus walk rate, xFIP, and SIERA. Also, among 112 pitchers to throw 2,500 plus pitches in that span, he has the lowest expected WOBA against and the second lowest expected slugging against. And yeah, in my opinion, he has very clearly been the best pitcher of the last year and a half. And also, in my opinion, he has the best chance to repeat as a Cy Young winner since Corbin Burns after the 2021 season, just based on just the dominant underlying numbers. You mentioned that strikeout rate and walk rate both being elite, both being at least 90th percentile each of the last 2 years. And that's, 90th percentile as a starter is really impressive because that includes, relievers who only threw 60 innings. And Tarek Skubal was able to outdo a lot of them. So yeah, I really have a lot of faith in Tarek Skubal, and I think he'll be the number one pitcher in baseball for 2025. But yeah, without further ado, do we want to get into our 10 through 1? Or
I would
first, do
love
we
to.
do we want to just talk about some of the other pitchers we considered for this?
Yeah, I'll without any order. The other guys I had in my top 20 were Justin Steele, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Corbin Burns, Dylan Cease, Roki Sasaki, Garrett Cole, Sonny Gray, and Logan Webb.
Yeah, the guys I considered were Sonny Gray, Garrett Cole, Framber Valdez, Blake Snell, Max Fried, Jack Flaherty, Justin Steele, Tyler Glasnow, and Dylan Cease. Um,
I fully thought you were gonna have Steele on your list. I was like,
Justin
this seems
Steele.
this seems like a Chris guy. Like
Yeah,
this is exactly the kind of guy that Chris would throw up and be like, this is the big one.
yeah, he's kind of fulfilling that Max Fried arc.
Hmm.
But yeah, there was just too many too many interesting guys. I think this year maybe I valued like maybe innings less. Not that he threw a lot of innings last year, but or just kind of I guess the potential for dominance. And I see Justin Steele having another very quality season, but I don't see the same potential for dominance as I do like Yoshinobu Yamamoto or Garrett
Yeah.
Crochet.
It's a
Um,
tough list to find spots
yeah,
to put him over guys.
Yeah, because I saw Justin Steele was doing well again last year, and I was like, and his expected ERA was below 3, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll put him on the list next year, but there's just too many guys in the way, unfortunately. Um, but uh, but yeah, what is your 10 through 1?
Yeah, so my 10 through 1 was Michael King at number 10, Tyler Glasnow at number 9, Cole Reagans at number 8, Garrett Crochet at number 7, Blake Snell at number 6, Chris Sale at number 5, Jacob DeGrom at number 4, Zach Wheeler at number 3, Tarek Skubal at number 2, and Paul Skeens at number 1.
Yeah, my number 10 is Yoshinobu Yamamoto. At number 9, Corbin Burns. Number 8, Logan Webb. Number 7, Garrett Crochet. Number 6, Jacob DeGrom. Number 5, Cole Reagans. Number 4, Chris Sale. Number 3, Zach Wheeler. Number 2, Paul Skeens. And number 1, Tarek Skubal. And yeah, we only have one positional list remaining before we get into the Gionta Curren 50s.
Yes.
So yeah, fun stuff ahead.